I'm Deirdre Bolton. Today on ABC News Live, Mississippi is under a state of emergency as its largest city is without clean drinking water. The governor has activated the National Guard to help as thousands of residents line up in the summer heat for bottled water. We have the latest from Jackson. We are learning stunning new details in the FBI search of the former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. The first photograph released by the Department of Justice shows classified documents found on the property. We will break down the bombshell legal filings. Explosions reported overnight as Ukrainian forces try to retake a key city under Russian control. Videos circulating online show smoke rising over the area. This is as UN officials try for the dangerous journey to inspect the massive nuclear plant caught in the crossfire. We will bring you the very latest from Ukraine. But we begin with this breaking news of the FDA authorizing the updated booster shots designed to fight against the Omicron subvariant. The boosters are authorized to be used 2 months after your most recent shot. Pfizer's updated booster authorized for people ages 12 and up. Moderna's authorized for people ages 18 and up. For more, we bring in epidemiology Chief Innovation Officer at Boston General and ABC News medical contributor, Dr. John Brownstein. Dr. Brownstein, great to see you. How will these new boosters help us in the fight against COVID?
Yeah, well, Deidre, this is really great news because now we're finally seeing an updated vaccine. Remember, the original vaccines that we got were based on that original strain from Wuhan, and now we're finally updating these vaccines to account for Omicron, the subvariants BA4 and 5 that make up over 99% of cases. So now the fact is we'll have this booster that's bivalent. It will have that old strain plus the new strain of Omicron. Hopefully that will make a big improvement on our ability to fight infection, keep transmission down, protect against severe illness and death, especially as we expect a fall wave. Now, we don't know what variant it will be, but having a better matched vaccine really increases our chances for success and really to reduce that risk of a major fall wave that we're all concerned about.
So boosters authorized to be used 2 months after your most recent shot. Does this include people who even already got a second booster?
It does. And so it doesn't matter if you've had 1 or 2 boosters or no boosters at all. This shot will replace the current boosters. And as long as you're 2 months out from that previous shot, you can get this booster. Now, I am worried about booster fatigue. Many people are wondering, is this really necessary? Well, we have this improved vaccine, so it will make a big impact on our ability to reduce our own personal risk and the risk to the community.
So, Dr. Brownstein, moving on to monkeypox, Texas confirming its first death of a person with the virus here in the U.S. The cause, though, of death still under investigation. The patient apparently severely immunocompromised. That is according to the Texas Department of State Health Services. So what's the next step in learning how to combat monkeypox?
It's good news to see that the growth of this, epidemic across the country is slowing, but I am hoping that is not going to take our foot off the gas in terms of trying to understand this virus. So a lot of open questions, the role of asymptomatic individuals in the spread of the virus, the ability for this vaccine to actually prevent transmission of new cases, the ability for the virus to survive. We saw this with Ebola, that even post-infection, you can see potential transmission events. So as case count wanes, I hope that our commitment, doesn't change and that we start to try to answer some of these critical questions, especially understanding what will happen in the fall as kids go back to school. What is the risk to our younger kids, to our college students? They're in close proximity. I am worried that we're going to think that cases are slowing, so that there isn't a reason to keep pushing towards controlling this virus, which ultimately we can do.
Dr. John Brownstein, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Biden will be back in Pennsylvania tomorrow to deliver a primetime speech on what the White House is billing the continued battle for the soul of the nation. This will mark his second stop in the state this week. The president laid out his Safer America plan yesterday in Wilkes-Barre, highlighting more funding for police and efforts to combat crime. ABC's Kenneth Moten joins me now live for more on this. So, Kenneth, in Biden's remarks yesterday, he criticized what he calls MAGA Republicans for their response to the Mar-a-Lago FBI raid. What exactly did he say? What's the larger context?
Yeah, Deirdre, a fired up President Biden we saw in Pennsylvania yesterday. He actually criticized those what he called MAGA Republicans who he says have defended those pro-Trump rioters on January 6th. The president also criticized those who want to defund the FBI. What we really saw here from the president was his midterm message, trying to contrast himself with those Republicans as he tries to get more Democrats elected as well. We heard from the president, in fact, this was the first time he's been this forceful in his condemnation of Republicans who have badmouthed the FBI's raid on the former president's residence there in South Florida. Biden called it sickening. And zeroing in on Biden's midterm message, he said that he opposed the defunding the police, and he's opposed to defunding the FBI, an effort to really break down those stereotypes that Democrats are soft on crime and don't support law enforcement like Republicans do, Deirdre.
So Kenneth, the president spoke about his Safer America plan to combat gun violence, as you just alluded to, but what exactly is in the plan?
Yeah, in the plan, as the president spoke to that crowd, there were law enforcement officers in that crowd there in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The plan asking Congress to expand his budget with $37 billion that would go toward law enforcement and crime prevention, 100,000 additional officers on the streets for effective, accountable community policing, providing high-quality training. And then there's his gun reform initiatives, the president declaring that he is determined to ban assault weapons in this country, this after the U.S., of course, has suffered hundreds of mass shootings this year.
And we know that the president will make his third stop in Pittsburgh later this week. What can we expect from that visit?
Yeah, a lot of visits from the president to Pennsylvania because it is a battleground state. There are important elections there that the president's trying to get Democrats elected to, the governor's race, the Senate race as well, that could help his agenda here in Washington. We know that when it comes to the president there in Pennsylvania, he loves that state. He was born in that state. He's a big fan of that state, and he will use his clout there to tell the American people in a primetime speech actually tomorrow in Philadelphia what he's done for them. Deirdre, I know you asked about Pittsburgh, but I have to get that what you mentioned at the top end because that's an important speech the president will give. The White House says he will talk about not only what he has done for this country, but the fact that he believes that this democracy and our freedoms are still under attack, still at risk here as he tries to contrast himself with congressional Republicans and Republicans throughout this country as well. You mentioned Pittsburgh. It's going to be a busy Labor Day for the president because he's going to be in Pittsburgh, but he's also going to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This president, who is known as a pro-union worker president, will celebrate the American worker there on Labor Day.
Makes all the sense in the world. Kenneth Moten, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We want to continue now with our coverage. The state of emergency in Jackson, Mississippi. Governor Tate Reeves has activated the National Guard to help with the water crisis that has left more than 100,000 people in the state's biggest city without running water. Trevor Ault is in Jackson with the latest.
The urgent rush for water in Jackson, Mississippi, with a state of emergency declared.
Come on down, baby. Come on down.
Thousands lining up at distribution sites, 1 pack of bottled water per vehicle, as their taps at home have run dry.
Want some clean water, drink like everybody else. It's hard. It's rough on us right now.
At this location, some lined up 2.5 hours early. Those 600 cases gone in 90 minutes. A half-mile line of cars left empty-handed.
I have said on multiple occasions that it's not a matter of if our system would fail, but a matter of when our system would fail.
Last week's historic rainfall and subsequent flooding accelerated that inevitable failure, but the city had already been under a boil water advisory because of harmful contaminant levels. Deion Sanders, the coach of the Jackson State football team, speaking out about his players getting through the situation.
Right now, we're operating in crisis mode. I got to get these kids off campus, make sure all our kids are fed, and all our kids have the necessities of life for the next several days until this crisis resides.
The city went without water for a month last year, and a 2020 EPA report found multiple issues, including failure to replace lead pipes, faulty equipment, and a lack of trained staff.
We feel like we've been going it alone for the better part of 2 years.
The crisis also putting a spotlight on systemic infrastructural racism, as Jackson's population is more than 80% black.
The whole city is suffering at some point in place. Regardless of the demographic makeup, we're all feeling the brunt of it in some type of way.
Emergency maintenance is now underway to fix that water treatment facility, but the mayor says fixing everything wrong with the water system so this doesn't keep happening over and over could easily cost $1 billion or more. Deirdre?
Trevor Ault, thank you so much. A massive seaweed invasion is claiming the beaches of St. Thomas along with other favorite vacation spots in the Caribbean. Our ABC News chief meteorologist, Ginger Z, traveled there to tell us what's behind it and what the islands are doing about it.
In place of that iconic aquamarine water.
This is the worst piece of garbage water I've ever seen. Totally impossible to swim.
A brown, stinky seaweed has consumed beaches across the Caribbean, Mexico, and even Florida.
We saw a lot of seaweed, more than I've ever seen in an ocean before. It stunk, it got in the way, you know, it kind of affected my whole day.
Since 2011, this floating brown algae called sargassum has been getting progressively worse. This year, covering white sand beaches in record levels, more than 24 million tons. When it dies on the shore, it can be toxic to people, animals, and the economy. Scientists say that climate change and shifting weather patterns likely have something to do with it. Caribbean water temps this year stayed above average all winter, their third warmest on record.
Although we don't have a clear idea, most of the evidence point to warmer sea surface temperatures, so climate change and global warming, and a lot of nutrients dumped in the water, what we call eutrophication. Basically, we're fertilizing this in a warmer sea. So that's good for seaweed, not so good for the rest of the places that it affects.
So this stuff isn't only unsightly and stinky, but it can actually impact sea turtles. Little hatchlings have a hard time getting over this. It can shade coral, which is not good. And it can even acidify the ocean, which leads to sometimes fish kill.
One of the major problems is on St. Croix. The intake for the water, we have a desalination plant there, and the intake for that is being clogged up by the sargassum. Otherwise, it's just a stinking mess on the beaches.
Cleaning up these beaches could mean big money. For the U.S. Virgin Islands, tourism makes up more than half their GDP, so they've got to get this stuff out of here. Unfortunately, a lot of the big resorts face east, and that is where the sargassum piles up. Now, they've spent thousands a month trying to pick it up and get it out of here, but also have to figure out what to do with it next. The first issue is just figuring out what to do with all of it. The landfills don't want it because they're already all but full on most of these islands. And once the seaweed dries out, it has arsenic in it and it can be very flammable. I want you to look from our drone, though, because this is one of their Band-Aids as of late. This is a company, many of them out there, that do these floating berms that at least funnels most of the sargassum to one place so it's easier to clean up. But the question really is, what are they going to do with it once they pick it up? Some companies are trying to make bricks, skin care. They have solutions that potentially could be fertilizer, but there could be environmental consequence to all of those. So they're trying to figure that out, and they have to because they expect these numbers to increase in the years to come. Deirdre?
Ginger Z, thank you so much. Now to those overnight developments in the Trump investigation. The Justice Department is filing a stunning new motion challenging the former president's request for a special master in the Mar-a-Lago case and offering explosive new details alleging lies and obstruction of justice. ABC News Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas has the report.
The first look inside the FBI's dramatic search of Mar-a-Lago. This photograph showing document after document labeled secret and top secret in bold red letters, recovered at an unsecured resort. Look closely, you'll see one labeled HCS, initials for Human Intelligence Control System, meaning it likely contains information about or the identities of U.S. spies and informants. DOJ's 36 motion challenging Trump's need for a special master also provides the most detailed narrative thus far of why the FBI took the extraordinary step of searching the home and offices of a former president. The new details include a rare submission of grand jury material from an ongoing investigation, revealing in May a grand jury subpoena was issued for classified documents stored at Mar-a-Lago. The filing describing how FBI officials went to the resort to pursue the material in June. DOJ suggesting that the Trump team was misleading at every turn. This filing includes a June 3rd document from a Trump attorney certifying that all classified documents had been turned over. But soon afterwards, the FBI uncovering multiple sources of evidence indicating that the response to the May 11th grand jury subpoena was incomplete and that the classified documents remained at the premises. And for the first time, startling specific allegations of obstruction of justice. According to the court filing, the FBI developed evidence that government records were likely concealed and removed from the storage room at Mar-a-Lago, and that efforts were likely taken to obstruct the government's investigation. Some of that classified material found in a series of desks in Trump's office. More than 100 documents recovered. Again, this after Trump's attorney had claimed that all the material had been turned over.
DOJ officials claim Trump has little to no standing to request a special master review of documents based on issues of privilege. They said there could be no claim of executive privilege because the classified documents do not belong to Trump. They belong to the U.S. government. Deirdre?
Pierre Thomas, thank you so much. Coming up, it is not rising from the dead. It's not after brains, but zombie ice could spell a potential disaster for coastal areas of the world. We will tell you what you need to know. Welcome back. A new study finds that Greenland has more than 120 trillion tons of ice that can be thought of as zombie ice. That's right, zombie ice that is going to raise the sea level globally by at least 10 inches. This coming on the heels of data from the Nature Climate Change Journal that states 3.3% of Greenland's ice will melt regardless of carbon cutting actions. How much of a threat does this present to us? Joining me now to discuss it is Richard Alley. He is professor of geosciences at Penn State University. Professor, thanks in advance for your time. What exactly is zombie ice, and why should we be worried about it?
Yeah, so if you drop an ice cube in your glass of tea, it hasn't melted yet, but it's going to. And you could call that zombie ice. We have raised the temperature. It is now warm enough that parts of Greenland are like the ice cube in your glass of tea. It is going to melt. It just hasn't had time to melt yet. And so that is what is being called zombie ice. And as they said, this is enough to make a real difference to the ocean level, but it's still only 3% of Greenland. There is enough ice in Greenland that if you melt it all, the ocean goes up 24 feet.
Well, let's stay with the unavoidable 10 inches before we talk about 24 feet, please. But that 10 inches is still more than twice as much as sea level rise, as scientists had previously expected, right, from the melting of Greenland's ice sheet. So does this change at all the timeline for how globally nations should be dealing with climate change?
It shifts it a little bit worse. So, you know, that we are warming the world. This is raising sea level, partly because the ocean water expands as it warms, partly because the ice in the mountains is melting and flowing into the ocean, and because the edges of Greenland are melting and flowing in the ocean, and a little bit from Antarctica. What this does is say we're likely to get a little more from Greenland. We're likely to get a little more rise on the coasts than we had been planning for. What's happening there already is challenging for people, and so this does not make it better.
Now, a new report today confirms record high greenhouse gases, sea levels, ocean heat in 2021, and you say the committed melting and sea level rise is, as you described it very well, an ice cube put into a hot cup of tea. How do we cool down, if there's a way, our atmosphere?
Yeah, so the path is to quit releasing greenhouse gases, which are primarily carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels. So if we want to limit the warming, we want to keep the melting of Greenland to a few percent and not a lot of it, and a lot of the feet of sea level rise that are locked up in Greenland, we get off of releasing carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels to the atmosphere.
All right, so it sounds like, as far as you are concerned, it is a relatively simple solution, perhaps difficult to follow, but a simple and clear answer. Professor Ali, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're lending us your expertise. Coming up, more of today's top headlines. Don't go anywhere. More news is next. Welcome back to ABC News Live. Ukrainian forces are ramping up their offensive towards Kherson. The UK's Ministry of Defense says they have pushed the front line back some distance. Videos circulating online show smoke rising over the area as the Ukrainians strike Russian targets. Meanwhile, UN inspectors are making their way to the power plant caught in the crossfire and under Russian control. President Zelensky says his officials will do everything they can to help, but much depends on what access the Russian military will give the inspectors once they reach the plant. The U.S. Army has temporarily grounded its fleet of 400 Chinook helicopters because of engine fires blamed on fuel leaks. The Army says a small number of choppers were affected. There were also no injuries or deaths, but the grounding was done out of an abundance of caution while they fixed the problem. And people around the world are remembering Mikhail Gorbachev, a man who played a complicated and unique role in history. He sought more peaceful relations with the West when he was named president of the Soviet Union in 1985. He helped to end the Cold War without bloodshed before resigning in 1991. His legacy transforming one of the most powerful countries during a time of war, and he is being honored by the world. Mikhail Gorbachev died at the age of 91 from a serious and long illness. That is according to the Moscow hospital where he was treated. He will be buried next to his late wife, Raisa. And turning to sports, Serena Williams is set to take court again at the U.S. Open for what could be the last time. The 23-time Grand Slam champ will compete against the #2 seed in front of what is expected to be a sold-out crowd. ABC's Lara Spencer has the very latest from Queens. Hi, Lara.
Definitely want to talk to you about Serena, but you know, there is other tennis actually happening here at the U.S. Open, so I do want to give you a quick roundup. Let's talk about Rafael Nadal. He looked healthy after that abdominal injury that he suffered at Wimbledon. He won last night in his first round matchup, and if you're hearing me say that, you're probably saying, of course he did, it's Rafa. But if you watched him play, Rinky Hijikata, you are definitely saying, who is that kid? He's 21 years old. He went to UNC Chapel Hill before going pro. It's his first time here at the Open. The 198th ranked Australian played out of his mind. Nadal looked shocked when Hijikata beat him decisively in the first set. Nadal prevailed, but remember that name, guys, Rinky Hijikata. On the women's side, 3 former U.S. Open champions now out after just the first round of singles. Venus Williams, Naomi Osaka, and last year's singles winner Emma Raducanu all lost in straight sets. So 3 big names out on the women's side, but the biggest name of all, yes, Serena Williams still in it. The celebration continues tonight right behind me in Arthur Ashe Stadium when she takes on the #2 seed Anett Kontaveit. A sold-out crowd expected for what could be the last singles match of her career, but do not count her out. Analysts agree Serena looked incredibly strong in that electric opener over Danka Kovanic on Monday night. Her on-court advisor, our friend Renee Stubbs, telling me just this morning, this opponent Kontaveit, hits a huge ball, but if Serena's serve is on, she could have a big shot here. She'll go to the gym today at about 4. She'll go to the practice court at about 5:30. We're told she's in great spirits. And listen, as she said herself on Monday, this is all gravy now. There are no expectations. She knows this crowd is behind her 100%. She's going to go out there. She's going to enjoy every moment of it and do her thing. It all happens tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. We're going to find out later today when she and her sister Venus will play doubles. We know it's on Thursday, and we'll let you know what time as soon as we know.
Lara Spencer, thank you very much. I'm Deirdre Bolton. Stay with us at ABC News Live. We continue with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.